Earlier this week, we documented the custom shop modern Les Paul. If you missed it, check it out in this episode. Today, I found the prototype of the USA modern. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Yeah, I thought it was funny how I found both of those prototypes within about a month or so of each other, too. But no, the Gibson USA Les Paul Modern was first introduced in the year 2019. It was basically just a re-envisioning and slightly dumbing down of the old high-performance series. They offered them in new colors, but the biggest difference was the original and modern collection was a thing. They made a little bit more sense as far as the lineup, so people were more excited to try them out. I like the guitar, but honestly, the Epiphone version outshines it as far as dollar to value. It is one of my favorites. So today, let's go ahead and see one of the prototypes, as they were trying to redesign the old HP series. But first off here, I am so incredibly excited to finally have one of these cases in my hands. This was the very shortly lived Teardrop HP High Performance case. When it first came out, I actually was so excited about this new design because it was the first time Gibson kind of reissued something that was chainsaw-esque. But nowadays we actually have a kind of reissue. But these things were just so fascinating because the version before this was a complete metal one and they were just way too heavy. This one had that nice sleek carbon fiber design to it. It wasn't quite as clunky and big and rectangular. It was just that perfect marriage of protection and class. But let's go ahead and take a look at this prototype. Oh my, that is an interesting finish. Kind of reminds me of what they put on some of the Epiphone Les Paul Moderns. It's got this sandy beach vibe, but then there's a little bit of blue on the edges. It just depends on which way that the flame goes. The blue kind of wicks across the top. That is a really cool color. I'm digging that. And then on top of that, we got some nice wood grain underneath. So finish option is a little bit different, but I think there was a high performance that had something kind of similar to this. And we've got a really dark fretboard here. Now, it's not actually ebony because that didn't come back until 2019. This is still within the rich light era, and that's what this particular example has. But we did not have the real mother of pearl inlays yet. They are acrylic on this prototype. Honestly, I'm kind of glad they changed that for the production runs because real mother of pearl is kind of a cool premium feature. So fake and fake versus real and real. Or maybe we should say man-made versus real. Let's see what else we've got going on here besides just our top. How is the back spec'd? Does it have the little swoop? Yes, it does. So we still had that, but that wasn't necessarily new just for the Les Paul Modern, but they did have it on this prototype, so that's always good to know. And then, hey, would you look at that? We've got a little bit of a belly cut. That wasn't on the regular Les Paul Modern. But as far as our other specs, it definitely feels like it's got that really slim asymmetrical neck profile shape. Wouldn't surprise me if we still have the compound fretboard radius. Our toggle switch feels very different, sounds different too. We'll have to see what's going on with that on the workbench. And then as far as our electronics, we still have our shielding infused back plates, and it looks like we've got our push-pull pots. So we'll have to see if those do the same thing as always, and if these are the exact same pickups. But we've got this beautiful natural finish. But wait until you see the backside of our headstock here. I mean, first off, take a look at our neck. It's got some nice flame figuring within it. That's just a random choice spec, but whoa. What is that? We've got the Apex Headcarve on a Gibson USA? Yeah, apparently they were going to try to put that on the USA models, and they just decided not to. This Headcarve is a little bit more extreme than a normal Apex. Again, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you can check it out. This is what they ultimately came out with in 2017. And I just recently learned that old Orville Gibsons actually had something similar, so these were actually kind of a tribute to those. But this prototype one is significantly pointier right there, whereas this one's a little bit more rounded off. So I'm definitely glad I picked this up to document that, because that is a completely unique headstock volute design. It doesn't seem to go quite as far up the headstock. As far as where you see it, it pretty much ends right here, but there's just like a little bit of a bump that goes all the way up. So less but more at the same time. That is freaky. I kind of like it though. But there we go, just in case you missed it, stamped prototype with a 2018 serial number. If you recall, the Gibson Demo Shop once did a huge sale on all the prototypes of the original collection. There was around 3 of each color. I actually had a complete set of the original collection prototypes at one point, but that was before I had a personal collection. I remember saying, you know, if I had a personal collection, I would keep these guitars, but I parted the set out. But I was really curious how many prototypes there would be. and I was always waiting for that next dump of the modern prototypes. And it never ended up happening, and I think it's because it's right here. Now, is there a slight chance that this was not actually initially meant to be the Les Paul modern prototype? I mean, if this was prototyped out in 2018, it could have been for the 2019 model year lineup, and they might not have known that they were going to get acquired at this point, and this is just what became the new Les Paul modern. I'd be open to some discussion on that, but there have been a few of these out here, and they usually ended up in Japan. I picked this one up from a friend who's also a dealer. He had messaged me that he had just pulled it out of Japan, and he thought it'd make a good episode, and I agreed, so I just went ahead and bought it from him. But since I don't have the original collection prototypes, I feel really sad now that I have this. But now that I know that this Apex Headcarve is a little bit different than the production ones, I think I'm gonna have to think about keeping this one too, because it's just a cool little piece of transitional Gibson history here. So just to be clear here, there very well could be a Pelham Blue and the Sparkling Burgundy Les Paul Modern that's actually marked a prototype that is a more correct prototype for the Les Paul Modern. But this one's certainly transitional within that time period when they were thinking about the new 2019 model year. But as far as our case candy here, unfortunately nothing too special, just our regular owner's manual, which is in Japanese, which backs up the story of them mainly being sold to Japan. It's not necessarily marked prototype on any of the paperwork, but nothing's filled out as far as that goes. Just our model identifier and serial, and then our USA style owner's manual, and our newly discontinued Gibson Gold Warranty blue booklet. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and throw this thing on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our fun little prototype here, let's see what pickups did they load this thing with. Looks like we have a 57 Classic in our neck and a 57 Classic Plus in the bridge. Those are actually relatively traditional pickups. And as far as our readings within the circuit, 8.11 k ohms in our bridge, 7.87 in the neck, and the middle for fun at about 4. So that's about where a normal set would be. But what I found was cool was our codes in here. So we have SF. That stands for the official color code of this one, Seafoam Fade. Although what's nice about this finish is it almost still looks like a normal bursted color, because fade refers to only having the burst like right here, and then it completely disappears out the back. But since you have like a little bit of blue within the flames anyway, it just kind of looks like a normal one. But anyways, here on the screen, fade versus burst. You kind of get the idea. As is common with Henry J era guitars, yeah, they could have really cleaned these routes up. It's very dull router bitty stuff. But wait till you see what's in here. They also marked it prototype, and we can indeed tell they've got the 19, so that means this was intended for the 2019 model year. But little did they know, everything was about to change. But cool to see everything else there, as well as how thick our maple top is, and the start of our mahogany body. You just have your typical advanced plated incorporated bridge. It's lightweight aluminum, and you also have your hex key adjustments. All the same things are true for our tailpiece as well. You've got independent volume and tone controls for each pickup, and just like I showed you earlier, every single one has a push-pull pot. Now this is going to get a little bit more complicated when we go on to the back, but these ones will either split or tap your pickups. This one right here is for your high-pass filter, and then this will be like an in and out of phase. But before we continue on to our neck, I just really want to appreciate this top again. It really is just like being at a very shallow end of the beach. I mean, it's got so much color and like sand underneath it. I've never really loved this hue until I got it in person. So it's definitely something you need to experience if you've never had a seafoam fade. And maybe it's just this finish. It plays well with flame tops. It just has a nice 3D effect. I'm digging that. But you'll notice no pickguard stock from the factory. Unlike the HPs, we do not have any metal pickup rings over top of our black plastic, so it kind of gives it a slightly more modernized appeal. That doesn't mean this didn't have them at one point in time. They might have just took them off. But I would assume this still has the modern weight relief because it's pretty light. So I already told you it's a Richlite fretboard with acrylic inlays, so nothing too fascinating there. But it does indeed appear to start about 12 inches for our fretboard radius. And by the top of the fretboard, you're about at 16, so it is compound. Nothing funky with our scale length, 24 3/4. Then we have a 1.68 inch nut width, which increases to about 2.1. A first fret neck depth of 0.8, that's really thin. And then only a mere 0.86 by the 12th. Yeah, I thought that felt like a blade-thin neck. Here's that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. You can definitely see how there's a little bit more of a hump on your bass side, and then it just flattens out a little bit on the treble side. That's what they mean by an asymmetrical neck. It's definitely not a neck profile for everybody, but ultra-modern players seem to like it. At first I was kind of scared the nut had been replaced, because it looked a little bit off in photos, but it does appear to be original looking at the edge. Although it doesn't match the binding very good in color. And interestingly enough, we've got a standard truss rod cover, but our truss rod is looking good. And we've got the Les Paul model silkscreen with our Gibson mother of pearl logo and our locking Grover tuner tops. Now moving on to the backside, you get some more of the sandy beach vibes. But here's what makes things interesting. We have the high performance 4 system in here, so that means everybody's favorite dip switches that they like to make fun of. So up is on, down is off. You have 5 different customizable controls. Number 1 controls the neck, number 2 controls the bridge. In the off position, you are tapping the pickup. In the on position, you are splitting the pickup when you activate the push-pull. Now you might ask, well, what's the difference between tapping and splitting? Splitting literally takes one of the coils out, so you're having it. But to tap a pickup, you're just taking some of the windings out of each pickup, so it's going to result in a slightly different tone. It's just one of those things you're going to prefer one or the other, and you'll set it and forget it. Number 3 and 4, again, neck volume, bridge volume, but it controls a high pass filter. And then number 5 is turning on transient suppression in and out of the circuit. If you want to see a video covering all the different tones, I messed with that in this one, the cool hot pink fade HP video. But for this one, I'm actually going to put it onto tap mode because it's a little bit different than what I normally document. And I'll leave everything else in the on position. But lovely wood grain back here on top of everything. Now this is not a mint condition collectible. It was definitely played. It's got some nicks and dings, but honestly, it looks so good. I really don't care. But I was telling you guys that the toggle switch felt weird. It's because they're not using a Switchcraft one. It's a PCB, which honestly, I kind of like the way it feels. It's very fluid, but it's significantly different than what you're used to on a Gibson. And my goodness, couldn't they sharpen the routers or clean it up? It just looks so terrible in there. At least that's one good thing about modern Gibson. Even if you do get some beardies here and there, it's never as bad as the late Henry J era, that's for sure. You do have the thin binding in the cutaway over here. There's our little swoop. Now this is not an Axcess heel. In fact, I really don't like the comfort swoop. It basically just thins it down like a custom light, but you still have the pokiness and bulkiness of the heel right there. They don't really solve anything except for thinning it up a little bit. That's why I pay the big bucks for the Axcess customs, because they get rid of that. It is a complete solid swoop. So not only do you have a slightly thinner body in this area, you get rid of the heel and everything else. And it's just so much comfier. Then that flame neck really comes out right here on the workbench. That's just a great example. What more can you ask for? A prototype with a really cool Apex Headcarve type volute, and it's got a flame figured neck. But here we can see the backside of our Grover tuners, our Made in USA stamp, prototype, as well as our serial number. That would have been interesting had Gibson USA had to do these for the modern Les Paul. I think I would like it though, to be honest, because that is very modern. But they decided just to leave it within the custom shop. But this one, not a bad weight, 8 pounds, 5.4 ounces. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how some of these tones sound. Okay, so our regular humbucker tones, those sound pretty good, but now let's tap them just for fun. Gotta say, I think I just prefer the regular humbuckers. As far as our high pass filter, I don't really understand what that is. I'm sure it makes sense in the correct situation. And then we've got our middle position out of phase. So normally we got this. That's right, you can pair the out of phase with your coil splits as well. It just basically gives you that quacky out of phaseness. But I'm kind of curious, I want to hear how the coil splits sound, so yeah, I'm going to tear it apart again. So far, I would say I just prefer the coil splits, so maybe that's why this didn't last too long outside of people just not being willing to try the dip switches. I mean, it's nice to be able to have a tap if you happen to put a different set of pickups in here that are on a quick connect system, but I think I'll just actually end up leaving that on split, mainly because it's a little bit more familiar. But for me, it's all about the regular humbucker tones. I dig them. Let's kick on some dirt. Now that we know about this interesting 2018 Gibson Les Paul prototype, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Honestly, I ended up liking it a lot. This color scheme is not what I normally associate a Les Paul with, so it just kind of inspired me to play kind of lighter music, and I ended up actually liking the neck profile on this one. And I'm not normally into really blade thin necks, but something about this one, it's just got a certain vibe to it. The volute on this one is just massive in your peripheral vision though, as compared to what a normal Apex headcarve is. So I guess I kind of understand why they didn't go for it. They probably feared people seeing that on the back of a Les Paul. They'd be like, what's going on there? But honestly, with the custom shop ones and people being akin to it nowadays, I think people would accept it on a modern Les Paul. So what a perfect summer guitar. Kick it all off. All the pools are starting to open now. We've got the flames, we've got the beach water, we've got the tones. Troglodytes. I hope you enjoyed learning about this one with me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.